If you've ever felt like there's more to you than what you've been told, or if you've questioned who you really are beneath society's expectations, then you're in the right place. Today, we're diving into one of the most powerful insights in psychology, the idea that who you think you are may not be who you truly are. By the end of this video, you'll see yourself in the world in a completely new way. Stay with me, because this could be the most important realization of your life. The illusion of self. Are you really who you think you are? Imagine waking up one day and realizing that the person you believe yourself to be, your personality, your opinions, your ambitions, may not actually be you. That your entire identity has been shaped not by your own free will, but by external forces, your family, your culture, your environment, and even societal expectations you were never consciously aware of. Carl Jung, one of the most influential psychologists of the 20th century, believed that most people never truly discover who they are. Why? Because they confuse their persona, the mask they wear for the world, with their true self. The persona, the mask you wear for society. The persona is the version of yourself that you present to others. It is shaped by social conditioning, what you believe will make you acceptable, respectable, and likable. From childhood, you are taught which behaviors are rewarded and which are frowned upon. Over time, this shapes your external identity. For example, if you were praised for being polite but scolded for being assertive, you may have learned to suppress confidence in favor of agreeableness. If success was defined by academic achievement in your family, you might have adopted certain career ambitions, not because they truly resonated with you, but because they reinforced your sense of worth. The persona is not inherently bad. In fact, it helps us function in society. It allows us to adapt, communicate, and navigate social structures. But the danger lies in mistaking it for who we truly are. Many people go through life clinging to their persona without questioning whether it aligns with their authentic self. They shape their goals around what will earn approval. They filter their opinions based on what is socially acceptable. They suppress emotions that don't fit the role they believe they must play. The trap of social approval. Psychological research confirms that social acceptance often overrides authenticity. A famous experiment by psychologist Solomon Asch demonstrated this phenomenon. Participants were placed in a group where they had to answer simple questions about line lengths. Unbeknownst to them, the rest of the group were actors who deliberately gave wrong answers. Despite knowing the correct answer, more than 75% of participants conformed at least once to the incorrect majority. This study revealed a powerful truth. Humans fear standing alone more than they fear being wrong. From an evolutionary standpoint, this makes sense. Our ancestors survived by belonging to tribes. Being rejected by the group once meant isolation and danger. That survival instinct still exists today, even though modern society no longer depends on small group tribalism. The three faces of identity. There is an old Japanese saying, "You have three faces. The first you show to the world. The second you show to your close friends and family. The third you never show anyone. That is the truest reflection of who you are." Jung's theory of individuation is about discovering that hidden third face, the self that exists beneath the mask of social expectation. But if the persona is not the real you, then who are you? The answer lies in the part of yourself that you have been conditioned to ignore. The shadow. The shadow, the hidden side of your personality. If the persona is the mask you present to the world, then the shadow is what you hide from it. The shadow contains all the aspects of yourself that you have suppressed because they were deemed unacceptable. This includes negative traits, anger, selfishness, envy, but also positive qualities you were discouraged from expressing, such as ambition, independence, or deep emotions. Jung believed that most psychological suffering comes from the rejection of the shadow. The parts of yourself that you suppress do not simply disappear. Instead, they operate unconsciously, influencing your thoughts, behaviors, and emotional reactions in ways you do not realize. Psychological projection, how the shadow controls you. One of the most common ways the shadow manifests is through projection. Jung explained projection as the unconscious act of attributing your own repressed traits onto others. For example, if you are deeply insecure about your intelligence, You may find yourself frequently criticizing others for being ignorant or dismissing opposing views as stupid. If you have unresolved anger but refuse to acknowledge it, you may constantly notice how angry other people seem. A psychological study at the University of Michigan found that people who harshly judged others for moral failings, such as dishonesty, were significantly more likely to have committed those same failings in their own lives, whether consciously or unconsciously. Projection serves as a defense mechanism. It allows people to externalize their inner struggles rather than confront them. Have you ever intensely disliked someone without fully understanding why? Often, the people we dislike reflect parts of ourselves that we have buried, the shadow in folklore and mythology. The idea of the shadow exists in many ancient stories. In Buddhist philosophy, there is a tale of a monk who lived in self-denial, rejecting all worldly desires. One night, he dreamed of a monster lurking in the shadows of his monastery. No matter how much he prayed, the monster never left. It grew larger each night. One day, the monk finally stopped resisting. He turned to the monster and said, "I see you." At that moment, the monster disappeared. This story reflects Jung's insight. You cannot defeat the shadow by ignoring it. The only way to integrate it is by acknowledging it. How the shadow controls your life without you knowing. Because the shadow is unconscious, most people are unaware of how it influences them. Here are a few signs that your shadow is controlling you. You judge others harshly for behaviors you secretly struggle with. You have strong emotional reactions to small things. Triggers often reveal unresolved issues from the past. You suppress emotions instead of expressing them. This can lead to passive aggressiveness, resentment, or even physical stress. You feel stuck in patterns of self-sabotage. The shadow can keep you trapped in cycles of fear and avoidance. But here's the most important insight. The shadow is not your enemy. In fact, it holds the key to unlocking your true self. Jung believed that true psychological growth does not come from eliminating the shadow, but from integrating it. This means acknowledging your suppressed emotions, fears, and desires, not to act on them blindly, but to understand them. How to integrate your shadow and discover your true self. Jung developed the process of individuation, which is the lifelong journey of integrating the persona and the shadow into a unified self. Here's how to start. Observe your emotional triggers. Pay attention to what makes you irrationally angry or upset. Ask yourself, is this reaction really about the other person, or is it revealing something about me? Question your beliefs. Many of your beliefs about yourself were shaped by childhood conditioning. Challenge your assumptions about what is good or bad. Use creative expression. Art, writing, and music are powerful ways to explore your unconscious mind. Jung believed that dreams often reveal the shadow's messages. Keep a dream journal. Embrace solitude. Spend time alone, free from distractions, and reflect on your deepest fears and desires. Seek out deep conversations. Find people who are also on a journey of self-discovery. Surface-level interactions reinforce the persona. Deeper conversations help reveal the self, the shadow, the hidden side of your personality. If the persona is the mask you wear for society, the carefully curated version of yourself that you present to the world, then the shadow is everything you keep hidden. The shadow is the collection of suppressed emotions, desires, and traits that you have rejected because they do not align with the image you want to maintain. It contains all the aspects of yourself that were deemed unacceptable at some point in your life. This includes negative emotions like jealousy, anger, or selfishness, but also qualities like ambition, creativity, or assertiveness that were discouraged by your upbringing, culture, or social environment. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychologist who first conceptualized the shadow, argued that what we suppress does not disappear. It finds ways to manifest in our lives, often in ways we do not realize. How suppressing the shadow affects you. Many people believe they have control over their thoughts and behaviors. They assume that if they ignore certain impulses or emotions, those feelings will simply go away. But Jung discovered that the opposite is true. When you push a part of yourself into the unconscious, it does not vanish. It operates beneath the surface, shaping your habits, behaviors, and emotional reactions. For example, If you were taught that anger is unacceptable, you might suppress it, only to find it exploding unexpectedly in moments of stress. If you were discouraged from being independent, you might become overly passive in relationships, resenting those who assert themselves. If you were raised to believe that success is selfish, you might self-sabotage whenever you get close to achieving something important. This is why people often struggle with habits they know are destructive. The shadow operates in the unconscious mind, meaning its influence is invisible until you bring it to light. Psychological projection. How your shadow shapes your perception of others. One of the most powerful ways the shadow reveals itself is through projection. Jung discovered that people unconsciously attribute their own suppressed traits onto others. This means that the things that bother you most about other people are often reflections of something hidden within yourself. A study in cognitive psychology found that people who harshly judge others for negative traits, such as dishonesty, arrogance, or laziness, often display those same traits in subtle ways themselves. They are simply unaware of it. For example, a man who constantly criticizes others for being too emotional may actually struggle with expressing his own emotions. He is not truly upset with others. He is rejecting a part of himself that he has been conditioned to suppress. A woman who despises people who seek attention may secretly crave validation, but has been taught to see it as shameful. Someone who calls others lazy may have a deep fear of their own procrastination, which they refuse to acknowledge. This is why certain people trigger us more than others. When someone exhibits a quality that we have rejected in ourselves, it makes us uncomfortable. So instead of confronting it, we lash out. This phenomenon is why conflict often arises in close relationships. The traits you dislike most in your partner, family members, or colleagues are often traits that exist in some form within you. Recognizing this can completely shift how you navigate your interactions with others. The shadow in everyday life, a real-life example. Imagine a highly successful businessman who prides himself on logic and self-discipline. He views emotions as a weakness and ridicules people who talk about feelings. One day, he suddenly finds himself overwhelmed with anxiety and frustration. His personal relationships are strained, and he does not understand why he feels disconnected. The truth is, his shadow, the part of himself that experiences deep emotions, has been ignored for so long that it is now demanding to be acknowledged. Instead of facing his feelings, he projects them onto others, dismissing them as irrational or soft. But the real issue is not with others, it is within himself. He has denied his emotional side for so long that it has turned into a source of internal suffering. This is a common pattern in society. Many people suppress parts of themselves, only to find those qualities resurfacing in their reactions to others. The shadow at a societal level. Why groups demonize others. Jung believed that shadow projection does not just happen on an individual level, it happens at a societal level as well. Throughout history, entire societies have projected their collective shadow onto an external enemy instead of confronting their own flaws. During witch hunts, communities accused innocent people of being evil instead of addressing their own fears and insecurities. Political movements often paint opposing groups as dangerous while ignoring their own shortcomings. Nations at war justify their actions by labeling the enemy as inhuman, while overlooking their own moral failings. This is why prejudice, discrimination, and societal divisions persist. Rather than confronting uncomfortable truths about themselves, groups find a scapegoat to carry their collective shadow. Jung warned that when societies refuse to acknowledge their own dark side, they create cycles of conflict and destruction. True progress requires self-awareness, not just at an individual level, but at a collective one. How to integrate your shadow and transform your life. Jung believed that the shadow is not something to be feared. It is a doorway to self-discovery. Instead of rejecting it, we must integrate it. Integration means bringing the unconscious into the conscious, acknowledging the parts of yourself that you have suppressed, and learning how to work with them rather than against them. Here is how you can begin. Notice your triggers. Pay attention to the people and situations that provoke strong emotional reactions. Instead of immediately blaming them, ask yourself, what does this reveal about me? Reflect on your judgments. The qualities you despise in others may be aspects of yourself that you have disowned. Challenge yourself to see if there is truth in what you project onto others. Acknowledge your negative traits. Instead of suppressing anger, ask yourself what it is trying to communicate. If you suppress ambition, explore why you fear success. If you avoid vulnerability, consider where that fear originated. Engage in creative expression. Art, writing, and music can help you access emotions and desires that words alone cannot reveal. Jung encouraged dream analysis, as dreams often contain messages from the unconscious. Embrace discomfort. Growth happens when you step outside of your comfort zone and confront what you have avoided. The parts of yourself that you reject hold the greatest potential for transformation. Archetypes, the ancient symbols within you. Carl Jung's theory of archetypes suggests that deep within our unconscious mind lie universal psychological blueprints that influence our thoughts, behaviors, and identity. These archetypes are not just abstract concepts. They shape our experiences, drive our decisions, and even dictate the roles we play in life. Jung believed that archetypes are inherited patterns of the psyche, primordial images that have existed across cultures and time periods. They appear in myths, legends, religious texts, and even in modern storytelling. The reason stories about heroes, wise mentors, and inner battles resonate so deeply with us is because they reflect something fundamental within us. The most powerful archetypes and their influence on your life. While Jung identified many archetypes, some play a particularly dominant role in shaping the human experience. The hero, the seeker of meaning and growth. The hero is the part of you that longs for purpose, meaning, and transformation. It is the drive that pushes you to overcome obstacles, learn from challenges, and strive for something greater than yourself. Every hero's journey follows a similar pattern. The hero starts in an ordinary world, but feels called to something more. A challenge appears, often requiring them to leave their comfort zone. They face trials, setbacks, and adversaries. With the guidance of a mentor or inner wisdom, they find the strength to overcome the challenge. They return transformed, bringing new knowledge or insight to their world. This archetype explains why people feel unfulfilled when they are not growing. The hero within us craves progress. Real-life example. Consider someone who feels stuck in a dead-end job. If they embrace the hero archetype, they see their dissatisfaction as a call to adventure, a sign that they must take action, whether by learning new skills, switching careers, or starting their own business. Scientific insight. A 2018 study on resilience found that people who strongly identified with the hero archetype, who saw life as a journey of personal transformation, were significantly more adaptable and successful in overcoming obstacles than those who saw themselves as victims of circumstance. The shadow, the repressed aspects of yourself. The shadow is the hidden side of your personality, the fears, desires, and traits that you have suppressed. Jung argued that every person carries a shadow, and failing to confront it leads to self-sabotage. The shadow often manifests in projection, blaming others for qualities that exist within you, unconscious behaviors, reacting irrationally to certain people or situations, self-sabotage, avoiding opportunities out of fear or insecurity. Jung believed that true psychological growth requires integrating the shadow rather than denying it. Real-life example. A person who suppresses their anger may find themselves drawn to aggressive people, disliking them intensely without realizing that they are seeing a reflection of their own unexpressed emotions. Psychological study. Cognitive research has shown that individuals who acknowledge their negative traits are better at managing emotions and maintaining healthier relationships than those who avoid them. This supports Jung's idea that confronting the shadow leads to greater self-awareness. The wise old man, wise old woman, the inner source of wisdom. This archetype represents the deep, intuitive knowledge within you. It often appears in mythology as the mentor figure, like Gandalf in The Lord of the Rings or Yoda in Star Wars. But this wisdom is not just external. Jung argued that every person has an inner source of guidance. However, in a world dominated by logic and external validation, many people lose touch with this intuitive wisdom. How this appears in life. You have moments where your intuition gives you a clear answer, but you ignore it. You instinctively know what decision to make, yet seek external opinions instead. You encounter the same lesson repeatedly until you finally listen to your inner wisdom. Practical application. Learning to trust your intuition can lead to better decision making, stronger self-confidence, and a deeper sense of purpose. Practices like meditation, journaling, and deep reflection can help reconnect you with this archetype, the anima, animus, the hidden masculine and feminine energy within you. Jung believed that every person carries both masculine and feminine energy. The anima represents the feminine aspects within a man, while the animus represents the masculine aspects within a woman. These energies are not about gender, but about psychological balance. If a person represses one side, it can create inner conflict and imbalance. For example, a man who rejects his anima may struggle with emotional depth, intuition, or vulnerability. A woman who suppresses her animus may find it difficult to assert herself or take leadership roles. When balanced, these energies create wholeness, allowing a person to navigate life with both emotional intelligence and assertive action. Real-life example. A highly logical businessman who never acknowledges his emotions might find himself emotionally disconnected in relationships. If he integrates his anima, he develops emotional depth, making him a better partner and leader. A woman who has been conditioned to be passive might discover her animus, learning to stand her ground, pursue her goals, and lead with confidence. Folklore example. In mythology, many heroes must unite with a feminine guide or counterpart before they can fully realize their potential. This symbolizes the integration of both energies. Why understanding archetypes is life-changing. Jung argued that once you understand your dominant archetypes, you can unlock hidden strengths, recognize patterns in your life, overcome limiting beliefs, make more aligned decisions, how to identify your archetypes and use them for growth. Pay attention to the stories you relate to. The books, movies, and myths you are drawn to often reveal something about your dominant archetypes. Do you resonate with the hero's journey, the struggle of the outlaw, the wisdom of the sage? Notice recurring life patterns. Are you constantly facing similar challenges? Your dominant archetypes might be at play. For example, if you often feel lost, your wise old man woman archetype may be calling you to trust your inner wisdom. Explore your shadow. Observe the traits in others that trigger you. They may reflect something about your own shadow that needs integration. Strengthen your underdeveloped archetypes. If you find yourself lacking confidence, work on developing your warrior archetype. If you struggle with emotional depth, explore your anima animus. Embrace the journey of self-discovery. Life is a continuous process of individuation, integrating all parts of yourself to become whole. By understanding your archetypes, you gain insight into your subconscious motivations and open the door to profound personal growth. The ego, your greatest illusion. Most people walk through life believing they know exactly who they are. They define themselves with statements like, "I am this type of person," or "I would never do that." These labels provide a sense of stability, making life feel predictable and controllable. But what if this sense of identity is not real? What if who you think you are is simply a mental construct, a survival mechanism rather than your true self? Carl Jung believed that the ego, the part of the mind that creates a sense of self, is actually the greatest illusion of all. The ego is not your true identity. It is a mask, a defense system, and a filter through which you interpret reality. How the ego shapes your identity. From childhood, we are conditioned to see ourselves in a certain way. Society, parents, and culture teach us what is acceptable, what is rewarded, and what is discouraged. Over time, we internalize these messages, building a self-image that aligns with what we believe will bring us approval and success. This becomes our ego identity, the mental construct of who we believe we are. If we are praised for being responsible, we develop an identity as the reliable one. If we are criticized for being emotional, we might suppress our feelings and see ourselves as logical instead. If we are labeled as shy, we start avoiding social situations, reinforcing that identity. The trap of fixed identity. The biggest illusion of the ego is that it convinces you that you are static, that your personality, abilities, and traits are set in stone. Psychologists have found that people who believe in a fixed identity tend to struggle more in life. Scientific study, a study conducted at Stanford University by Carol Dweck, found that individuals with a fixed mindset who believed that personality and abilities were unchangeable were more prone to anxiety, less adaptable to change, and more likely to give up after failures. On the other hand, those with a growth mindset who saw themselves as constantly evolving were more resilient, handled stress better, and achieved higher success in personal and professional life. This means that the more you cling to rigid labels, the harder it becomes to grow. How the ego sabotages your growth. Because the ego is designed to protect your self-image, it resists change, even when that change could benefit you. For example, if you define yourself as bad at relationships, your ego will look for evidence to confirm this. Even if a relationship is going well, you might subconsciously sabotage it to maintain your self-image. If you believe you are not creative, you will avoid situations where creativity is required, reinforcing the illusion that you lack creativity. If you see yourself as a serious person, you might struggle to let loose and enjoy life, even when the situation calls for it. The ego prefers certainty over transformation. This is why people stay in jobs they hate, relationships that make them miserable, and habits that no longer serve them. Because changing would mean questioning their identity. The ego and social conditioning. One of the biggest sources of ego identity is social conditioning. From a young age, we are shaped by external influences. Parents teach us what behaviors are good or bad. Schools reward conformity over individuality. Society places value on success, appearance, and achievement. Over time, these external influences become internalized. You do not even realize that much of what you believe about yourself is not actually yours. It was programmed into you. Folklore example. There is an old Indian story about a baby elephant tied to a small stake in the ground. As a baby, it tries to break free, but is too weak. Over time, it stops trying. Even when it grows into a powerful adult elephant capable of breaking free with ease, it remains tied, believing it is still powerless. This is how the ego works. You are held back not by reality, but by the beliefs you have accepted as truth. How to break free from the ego illusion. Jung believed that breaking free from the limitations of the ego required deep inner work. The goal is not to destroy the ego, but to see through its illusions and recognize that your identity is fluid, not fixed. Question your labels. Every time you say, "I am this kind of person," pause and ask, is this truly me, or is it just a story I have told myself? For example, if you believe you are not good at public speaking, ask yourself, when did I decide this? Is it possible that I could improve? If you think I am not creative, ask, have I ever actually tried expressing creativity? Challenge your comfort zone. Because the ego resists change, stepping outside your comfort zone is one of the fastest ways to weaken its grip. Try doing something that contradicts your self-image. If you believe you are not spontaneous, do something completely unplanned. If you believe you are not athletic, try a new sport. Each time you prove to yourself that you are not as limited as you once thought, the ego loses power. Embrace the idea that you are always changing. Imagine looking at a picture of yourself from 5 years ago. Do you think, speak, or act exactly the same way? Probably not. Just as your body renews itself at a cellular level, your mind and identity are constantly evolving. Accepting this truth allows you to let go of outdated self-concepts. How to find your true self. If life truly begins when we find ourselves, the real question is, how do we begin this journey? Carl Jung believed that self-discovery is not about creating a new identity, but about uncovering the layers of conditioning, fears, and false beliefs that have shaped us. Finding your true self requires deep introspection, confronting hidden aspects of your personality, and embracing parts of yourself that you have rejected. Step 1. Observe your shadow without judgment. Your shadow consists of everything you suppress, your fears, insecurities, and desires that society or past experiences have taught you to hide. One of the best ways to recognize your shadow is to observe what triggers you in others. If someone's arrogance irritates you, ask yourself, do I suppress my own confidence? If you judge someone for being overly emotional, consider, am I uncomfortable with my own emotions? If a person's ambition annoys you, reflect, am I holding myself back? Scientific study. A study in cognitive psychology found that people who strongly criticize certain traits in others often exhibit those traits themselves in more subtle ways. This is known as psychological projection, when the mind pushes its own unwanted qualities onto others. Real life example. A man constantly criticizes people who seek attention. After self-reflection, he realizes that as a child, he was taught that seeking validation was selfish. As a result, he repressed his own need for acknowledgement and now projects that frustration onto others. Rather than rejecting your shadow, accept it as part of you. Jung believed that true self-discovery happens when we integrate, rather than deny, the parts of ourselves that make us uncomfortable. Step 2. Question your beliefs. Many of the opinions we hold about ourselves are not truly ours. They come from upbringing, society, past experiences, and even inherited cultural beliefs. To uncover your true self, you must question, what beliefs about success, relationships, and happiness were given to me by others? Do I believe these things because they are true for me, or because I was conditioned to accept them? What are 5 core beliefs I hold, and where did they originate? Psychological insight. Studies show that children are highly impressionable to social norms. In an experiment on conformity, when asked to identify an obviously incorrect answer, more than 75% of children went along with the group's wrong answer instead of trusting their own judgment. This demonstrates how deeply we are wired to adopt societal beliefs, even when they contradict our intuition. Folklore example. In many cultures, people believe certain numbers bring luck or misfortune. Some avoid specific colors, foods, or customs without questioning their origins. Often, beliefs persist not because they are true, but because they have been passed down unquestioned. The process of deconstructing your beliefs helps you recognize which ideas serve your true self and which ones were given to you by others. Step 3. Use dreams as a guide. Jung believed that dreams are messages from the unconscious mind, revealing aspects of ourselves that the conscious mind ignores. Keeping a dream journal allows you to notice patterns, symbols, and hidden emotions. If you frequently dream of being chased, it may symbolize avoiding a difficult truth. If you often dream of flying, it could represent a suppressed desire for freedom or independence. If you encounter a wise figure, Jung suggested this may be your subconscious guiding you. Scientific insight. Research in sleep psychology confirms that dreams help process emotions and unresolved conflicts. People who actively analyze their dreams often experience greater emotional clarity and self-awareness. Real-life example. A woman repeatedly dreams of drowning. After reflecting on her life, she realizes she has been ignoring her emotions and needs in relationships. Her subconscious is telling her that she is drowning in suppressed feelings. Your subconscious knows you better than your conscious mind. Paying attention to dreams can unlock hidden truths about your fears, desires, and life direction. Step 4. Balance your masculine and feminine energies. Jung introduced the concept of the anima, inner feminine, and animus, inner masculine, 2 psychological forces that exist in every person. In modern psychology, this translates to balancing rationality with intuition, structure with creativity, and logic with emotion. For men, embrace emotional depth, intuition, and creativity. Recognize that vulnerability is not weakness, but a path to strength. For women, strengthen assertiveness, independence, and structured thinking. Recognize that boundaries and self-direction are essential to personal growth. Scientific study. A study in personality psychology found that people who balanced both masculine and feminine traits had better mental health, stronger relationships, and higher resilience in life challenges. Real-life example. A man raised in a strict, logical household suppresses his emotions, believing that expressing feelings is a sign of weakness. As a result, he struggles with relationships and burnout. When he begins integrating his anima, his emotional, intuitive side, he experiences greater connection and personal fulfillment. Balancing both energies within yourself creates a sense of wholeness, reducing inner conflict. Step 5. Embrace solitude. In a world that constantly demands attention, solitude is where true self-discovery happens. Many people fear being alone because it forces them to confront their thoughts, insecurities, and suppressed emotions. But solitude is where you can listen to your own voice without external noise. Take intentional alone time without distractions. Reflect on who you are when no one is watching. Ask yourself, if I had no pressure to please others, what kind of life would I create? Scientific insight, a study on solitude and self-reflection, found that people who spent at least 15 minutes a day in quiet introspection reported higher levels of self-awareness, emotional intelligence, and overall life satisfaction. Real-life example. A woman who always seeks validation from others realizes, through solitude, that her fear of being alone comes from childhood rejection. Once she embraces solitude, she no longer chases approval. She begins defining her worth from within. True self-discovery does not happen in external validation, achievements, or distractions. It happens in silence, reflection, and authenticity. Life begins when you let go of who you think you are. Carl Jung's greatest insight into personal transformation is simple but profound. Your true evolution begins the moment you stop clinging to a fixed identity. Most people go through life assuming that they already know who they are. They define themselves through labels, their name, job, nationality, past experiences, and the roles they play in society. But Jung argued that this is a dangerous illusion. The self is not static. It is not fixed. It is an ever-evolving consciousness, shaped by experiences, beliefs, and even unconscious influences. The illusion of a fixed identity. From a young age, people are conditioned to believe in a rigid sense of self. Society reinforces the idea that identity is something to be built, protected, and maintained. If you excel in academics, you might be labeled the smart one. If you struggle with public speaking, you might be labeled shy. If you face setbacks, you might label yourself as unlucky. Over time, these labels become a psychological prison. People do not just describe themselves this way, they become these labels. Neuroscientific insight, studies on neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself, show that deep self-reflection actually changes brain structure. People who actively question their beliefs and identity experience greater cognitive flexibility, making them more adaptable, creative, and open to personal growth. Real-life example. A man grows up believing he is bad at relationships because of past experiences. This belief solidifies into his identity, making him subconsciously sabotage future relationships. The moment he questions this narrative, he breaks free from his past and rewires his brain for new possibilities. The fear of letting go. Why do people cling so tightly to a fixed identity? Because the unknown is terrifying. The moment you admit that your identity is fluid, you also admit that you are not who you thought you were. Your beliefs may not be true. Your fears and limitations were never real to begin with. This is an ego death, a profound psychological shift where you realize that you are not your labels, your past, or even your thoughts. In many cultures, spiritual enlightenment is described as the process of dying before you die, letting go of everything you thought you were so that your true self can emerge. The power of embracing change. When people resist change, they resist life itself. Jung believed that real transformation happens when people embrace individuation, the lifelong process of integrating all aspects of the self, including the persona, the mask you wear for society, the shadow, the suppressed parts of yourself, the anima animus, the hidden masculine feminine energy within you, the true self, the part of you beyond ego and conditioning. Only by letting go of rigid identity structures can you become who you were truly meant to be. Hash how to begin the process of letting go. Question your story. What is one belief you hold about yourself that limits you? Where did this belief come from? What if it was never true? Observe without attachment. When emotions arise, instead of saying, "I am angry," try, "I am experiencing anger." This subtle shift helps you detach from emotions and see them as temporary, not as part of your core identity. Try something that breaks your pattern. Take a different route to work. Learn a new skill. Travel alone. Change forces you to expand beyond your old self. Embrace solitude. When you are alone, without distractions, who are you? Most people avoid solitude because it reveals the truth. They do not know themselves. Accept that life is uncertain. Stop chasing certainty. Life is not meant to be controlled. It is meant to be experienced. Final thought. The self is limitless. Who you think you are today is just a fraction of who you could become. The moment you stop fearing the unknown and start embracing the process of self-discovery, life truly begins. So now the real question is, are you ready to meet your true self?